It's the eve before budget, and all around the house you've got mice who are squirreling away bits of cheese and just trying to preserve whatever it is here today, because you know, as well as I do, that tomorrow the Finance Minister is going to announce a whole raft of very serious measures that will make us just that little bit poorer. He wants to stimulate the economy. He wants to foster a savings culture. He's got a big agenda, but does it fit with your agenda? So tonight, I'm Bruce Whitfield, and I'll be Bruce Whitfield tomorrow, hopefully as well, if I've still got a shirt on my back. But I'm joined by Chris Gilmour, investment analyst at Absa Wealth and Investment Management, and Frank Magwegwe, who's a segment chief executive at Momentum Retail, to get their views on what we need out of the Finance Minister's mouth tomorrow. It is the Finance Minister's first budget. He made a very good impression in the medium-term budget policy statement, did it in Nene, but this is where it counts. This is where he's got to divvy up a very stretched pie. He's also got to tell us how much he's going to raise from a depleted human resource-driven SARS. He's also going to tell us how much he's going to borrow, and then he's going to tell us how he's going to tax us to pieces. Chris Gilmour, have you been this apprehensive about a budget in the last 20 years?
In fact, in the last 33 years, this is about the 33rd one I've listened to.
Yeah, but look, we had broken budgets for 13 years, and then we had Christine Berg and Derek Keys, and then Trevor Manuel, and we went on an upward budget trajectory. We got cuts, and we felt that we were better off. This is the first one where one looks to the kitty, and the kitty looks dry.
Yeah, and we've said for a while, you know, Praveen Gordhan, what kind of rabbit can he pull from the hat? And we thought, oh, because it's tough. But this is of a different order of magnitude, I fear. You know, because the issues, the challenges confronting Nene really are they're huge. You've alluded to a few of them, but he's got to provide austerity, I think, mainly for the ratings agencies.
Hilarious. Sorry, spend less. Yes.
Yes, okay.
Okay, but that's not going to happen.
But it's got to be seen to be doing it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, this is a consumer-oriented economy. And if you kill the consumer, then you kill the economy as well. And those nice people at Eskom are giving him a good hand.
It's so helpful.
Help. Yes,
so
lovely.
helpful.
Yes.
If this was, what is the mission for 2015? Let's destroy the economy 101. We're on a perfect path.
Yeah.
So he's got lots of things to balance there, Frank, because what he's got is a constrained economy where growth is going to be very, very difficult to come back. Just recently, Tito Mboweni, the former Reserve Bank governor, warning that we're headed for a recession unless Eskom can sort out our troubles for us. No finance minister wants to hear that the economy is not going to get to the 2% that he was anticipating. He's got a collections issue at SARS. He's got a purge of top talent at SARS to deal with. That's not yet going to manifest. And he's also got a growing debt problem. How's he going to manage it?
It's quite a challenge, Bruce. As Chris has said, I think, you know, if you look at the consumer, it's definitely pain in the short term. Because if you look at the message from the mini budget, it was very clear that, you know, we need to tighten our belts. We need to be seen to be doing something about the twin deficit, the budget deficit and the current account deficit for the sake of ratings and as well as being able to attract the FDI. So without a doubt, he will have to look at a number of areas, whether it's income tax at the top marginal rate, possibly an increase in VAT, adding to the fuel levy, because with the way that the fuel prices come, 10 cents a litre easily would raise 2.5 billion.
I'm watching him at 50 cents a litre on fuel.
And then you are looking there at 10.5 billion, Bruce. So the 12 billion that he mentioned in the mini budget will easily be able to raise that. And in fact, I think just in terms of laying the foundation to address the massive challenges we are facing, they should raise more for the investor. What does it mean in the short term? It is pressure, but for the long term, it should be okay for the country in terms of really a better climate of investment.
But I've got to live through the short term.
Absolutely.
That's the trouble. We've got to survive through the short term, Chris Gilmour. I mean, the idea of raising VAT, a lot of people always talk about VAT. Oh, no, this year it's the year to raise VAT. I quite like the idea of raising VAT, particularly on luxury goods. If you want to go and get yourself a replacement Maserati, because I know that you are a Maserati driver. Okay, maybe not. Just flying a kite, seeing what comes out of it. But if you want to go buy a Maserati, why should you not pay VAT of 20%? And you're going to buy the Maserati anyway, and the fiscus will benefit. So, by all means, as many people who want to drive Maseratis as possible, buy Breitling watches. If you're paying the VAT on it, be my guest.
Yeah. I mean, what you're talking about, Bruce, is a graduated form of VAT. So, in other words, you keep the normal VAT, particularly as it applies to low-priced goods. And I'm talking about the basics here.
No, food must remain zero rated.
Precisely, precisely. But if you want to tax the rich, so to speak, the kind of Robin Hood type approach here, by all means. The only problem I have with that is that it probably won't bring in that much.
Nah.
You know?
I mean, the UK tried. David Cameron's
Yeah,
government
22%,
put VAT up dramatically, put personal income tax, the marginal rate up to 50%. The French put theirs up dramatically as well. Gérard Depardieu,
went to live in Russia.
when he's not
Yes.
urinating in the aisle of aeroplanes, went to go and live in Russia of all places.
Yes.
You've got to know that a tax regime is brutal if you want to go and live in Russia.
Yeah.
And that's the risk, is people do find creative ways of escaping the tyranny of tax.
They absolutely do. And as I said on a number of occasions, Mr. Francois Hollande is not a scholar of history, obviously. I lived in Britain in the 1970s, and there was a chap called Dennis Healy, the
Yes.
Chancellor, and he loved saying, well, he was paraphrased as saying, but he actually never said it. He said words along these lines: "I'm going to squeeze the rich until the pips squeak."
Yes.
He didn't exactly say that, but along those lines. And all that happened is people like the Rolling Stones and Sean Connery went to live in France and places where you had low tax jurisdictions. So you do lose people. I think what what Mr. Nene has got to do this time around, I think he's got to be bold, and he's got to understand that we are in a deep crisis. In terms of the economy, not just Eskom, which is in the crisis. as
Eskom
well,
is
by the way.
symptomatic and,
Yes.
and is a cause of other issues.
I think areas like privatization, we're one of the few countries in the world that has such an extensive array of state-owned enterprises, state-owned companies. I think we've got to be bold enough to grasp the nettle here.
He can be as bold as he likes, but unless he's got cabinet support, Frank, he's not going to privatise paper clips. And the government has got a particular ideological bent, matches your tie. I was on Twitter the other day when Jacob Zuma was at the 103rd anniversary of the ANC, and he said the ANC is like a fine wine, it improves with age. I said, that's why he filled the cabinet with Reds. But there isn't a particular socialist ideological bent that says the state must control. It's a developmental state. You can't develop the state if you don't control the assets of generating economic wealth for its citizens, which is kind of antiquated. Now, is there any hope that we're going to see a shift in that ideology?
I think from what Chris has said, Bruce, just with the challenges that you are facing now, you look at the money needed for SAA, you touched on Eskom, talk about the post office. I think there's a deep sense of introspection and retrospection. So I think whilst we definitely won't get it in the budget, this budget around privatization, but I think the government is coming to that idea of these huge parastatals are difficult business to manage, and they keep on draining the state coffers. If you look at what is needed for SAA now, so I think that debate is starting to take place. When we would see,
do we have time for this debate?
I think we need implementation. So one of the things that I want to see out of the budget, Bruce, is a clear support of the National Development Plan, because it is good for the country around implementation. What are we coming to do?
Every single cabinet minister at Davos went, we got the National Development Plan.
Yes.
It's like, that's nice. And I've got a piece of paper. It's not doing anything on the table in front of me.
So implementation is not there. And I think those are the fundamental shifts, Bruce, that we're going to need in this economy to really get things going. So if you look at the mini budget, what Minister Nene said, again calling upon his colleagues, that guys, expenditure we need to start to cut down. So I want to see in this budget whether some of that is bearing fruit in terms of implementation on that. And then lastly, just talking about service investments, Bruce, just also getting a clear message around obviously retirement reform that is really ground to a halt thanks to COSATU.
The trade unions took the National Treasury and handcuffed it.
And it's quite a pity because in the long term, for a country that needs to raise that ratio of savings to GDP, I really think the delays that we've seen has really caused the country a lot. But I'm pleased to an extent if you look at now, clear message coming around tax-free savings, Bruce. So that's one, glimmer of hope in terms of what the current is facing at the moment.
A glimmer of hope, Chris Gilmour.
But you put your finger on it there a moment ago, Bruce, in terms of the trade unions. I think the trade union movement is as weak as it's been as long as I can ever remember. It's fractured. You've got it splitting up in terms of COSATU. You've got Irvin Jim with his faction going away. I think the government, ironically, has got a great opportunity at this point.
It's got a couple of opportunities. It's got a weak trade union environment. It has got an environment where the current account is benefiting from cheaper oil, and we've seen some very decent bond flows in recent months, which have helped the currency strengthen that little bit. Yes. There's a cushion. Hopefully, it doesn't turn out to be a whoopee cushion, but there's a cushion that we can utilise in this budget.
No, absolutely. So that's why I say it's not all gloom and doom. And as Frank says, I don't think we have the luxury of prevaricating any longer.
No.
We are at that kind of situation. I mean, I know the dynamics are incredibly different, but if I go back 25 odd years to the last days of the National Party government, I think they were faced with immense challenges. We had growth of 1% or less. things were looking really bleak. I mean, the rest of the world was ganging up against South Africa. And we didn't know what was going on in the background. I mean, there was an awful lot of really good news going on in the background. So I think we mustn't get overwhelmed by this sense of deep decay and
completely.
the
But
abyss.
then we've got to believe the good story that government says it's got to tell.
Yes.
The trouble is the government is telling a good retrospective story. It's telling the story of the last 20 years. I want the government to tell me. I want the Finance Minister and Nene to take a leadership position to tell me why the next 20 years look better than the last 20. And then I'm beginning to buy the story.
Absolutely, Bruce. And hence, going back to my point that, the implementation of the National Development Plan, if you just look at the document and what it sets out, the vision for the country, tackling youth unemployment, the longer the delay in terms of implementing that blueprint, I think it's really harming the economy. So for me, it's time for action. I think we've got enough plans. And generally, in South Africa, we're falling into this challenge of we've got workshop, we draft plans, we've got quarters, when there are problems. Implementation, is very slow. And as we see out of this budget, for me, really for the consumer, it's tough. You've got to tighten your belt. It's bad in the short term, but hopefully in the long term, as we start to tackle the budget deficit, I think we should be able to see the economy recover. A growth of 1.4, he reduced it from 2% at the mini budget back to the growth that Chris was talking about just before the end of the NP government. It's really quite sad. So a strong message of implementation. If there's one thing I want to hear, when the minister tables the new budget.
From your lips to the Treasury's ears and from your lips to the National Treasury's ears, there's still time to change that speech. Just put a couple of tweaks, copy paste, do whatever you like. Use the transcript from the show. Just add the lines in that we want in there, please. Mr. Minister, with respect, sir. That was Chris Gilmour, investment analyst at Absa Wealth and Investment Management, and Frank Magwegwe, who's the segment chief executive of Momentum Retail. That is us for this evening. It is Budget Day 2015 tomorrow. We hold our thumbs. We know that the taxes are going to come thick and fast. The Finance Minister's got a difficult balancing act. We just hope he's gentle. Good night, and we'll see you tomorrow, we hope. Good night.